So we got our first big Star Wars leak in a few weeks today, and for those of you who follow Star Wars leaks generally, you know that a healthy level of skepticism is probably important, because for every one true leak we get 3 or 4, maybe more rumors that turn out to be false. But when I see StarWarsNewsNet.com, I always pay attention, because they've got a really good reputation and they've earned my trust. So they apparently have a source within Lucasfilm who's been feeding them information about the future of the Star Wars movie universe. And as always, you guys should take this not at face value, but put some weight to it and determine if you believe it or not. But this stuff seems realistic to me, and they've claimed that they have this source in the past, and they're putting a lot of credence on what this guy says. So if it turns out to be true, they're going to lose all of their reputation. I just don't see that happening. And what did this source say, you might be wondering? Well, a lot, actually. They talked about upcoming anthology films, including a Bounty Hunters and an Obi Wan Kenobi film, and they kind of laid out how the next Star Wars sequels will be structured. I also just want to mention that a lot of people wonder whether Star Wars only has, 10 or 15 years left. And I think that this source confirms. I think it's also obvious that Star Wars is going to be around for a very, very long time. It's probably the most successful movie franchise in history, and Disney has so far shown a willingness to get as much out of their $4 billion investment as they can. Anyway, apparently the Obi Wan Kenobi movie is in the works. Not only that, but we're going to get an announcement in a few weeks, perhaps at Celebration. So this has all been Kathleen Kennedy's idea, and she's been big on this idea because she knows how much the fans want it. And of course, it's to feature Obi Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor, between episode 4 and episode 6. And the leaker was really clear in that this is going to be a standalone movie and not a trilogy of movies, not more than one movie, but a single movie. Also interesting is that he claims that Gareth Edwards, the director for Rogue One, might be the director for this upcoming movie if he's feeling up to it. And I think most fans will be happy about that, because although Rogue One wasn't a perfect movie, it certainly was directed well. And he says specifically that materials for this movie have been prepared for Celebration, and that he's got a gut feeling that we'll get an announcement then. He also says that there's a Bounty Hunters movie featuring Bobba Fett scheduled to come out, and this shouldn't be surprising to anyone who's been paying attention, because at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim 2 years ago, they mentioned that this movie was in the works. However, we've got no news about it, so many people thought it was dead. Well, it's not. And the source says that it's not going to be an origin story from what he understands. It's not going to be only about Boba Fett, but a film about all of the many bounty hunters at least. And kind of like a Suicide Squad, Boba Fett is just one part of this group. And he doesn't really tell us much more about that, but that should be interesting, and we don't really know when it's coming. So the third anthology film is kind of a weird one. It's like a romantic-themed Star Wars movie aimed for kind of the young adult audience. So the leaker or the author of the article kind of compares it to The Fault in Our Star Wars. And from just a strategic perspective, this makes a lot of sense for Disney, because I would think young girls are probably one of the least represented parties among Star Wars fans. And it would be nice if they could tap into that, and maybe nice if they could actually get a female director to be associated with the movie. Finally, regarding anthologies, he does talk a little about Han Solo's movie. He says that it's going to have a comic booky feel to it, which doesn't surprise me, a little pulpy, and that we're going to get information about it pretty soon. And then he moves on to talk about the main trilogies. So right now we're on the sequel trilogy. Apparently, in some point in the future, there will be maybe a final trilogy, I don't know, but up to episode 12. And he says that after the sequel trilogy, there's actually going to be a gap of a few years between the next main trilogy. And he says that this is largely because Star Wars is going to move, not completely obviously, but they're going to try to focus on getting into television. And really, that shouldn't surprise anyone. Dave Filoni, who was the director of Rebels, has been promoted to oversee multiple animated stories. And apparently there are a ton of stories that were produced at one point or another that haven't been used, but that aren't being thrown away. Like, they're going into storage, and when they need show ideas or whatever, they're going to be relied on. And they're going to be made popular by, perhaps a hiatus of movies for a year or two, possibly a bit longer. And this is also largely because they don't want the movies they don't want the moviegoers to get fatigued of Star Wars. And I think this is great because if we get a Star Wars movie every year, the magic is going to start to dwindle. So having a bit of a gap after Episode 9 to whatever the future holds is not a terrible idea. So there will be a new trilogy, and it will be directed at a different generation of Star Wars fans. And that's how it's always been. There was a gap between the prequels and the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, and then this eventual fourth trilogy will be aimed at a completely new audience. Not to say that it's going to be that long, but I mean a few years at least. And besides that, we also know that there are, aside for the Han Solo movie, there's probably a Bounty Hunter movie, there's probably an Obi Wan movie, there's probably some sort of teenage drama movie, and then there's probably some television shows in the works. So a lot from this post today. Let me know what you guys think. Is this bullshit? Like, this is a lot to leak at one point. So, as always, be skeptical, but I don't think that they would just make this up and throw it out to the internet forever. But yeah, let me know. Do you guys think this is real? And what anthology film do you want to see most? And what do you want to see from an Obi Wan movie? Because, personally, that's the one I'm most excited for. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. May the Force be with you.